What if the life you are desperately searching for has already been written? Not in the stars, not in the hands of fate, not in the mercy of luck, but in the 6 inches of space between your own 2 ears. What if the prison you wake up inside every single morning was never built by your circumstances, never constructed by your enemies, never erected by the cruelty of the world, but assembled brick by painful brick by the very thoughts you chose to think, the very stories you chose to believe, and the very limitations you chose to call truth? This is not a question designed to comfort you. This is the most dangerous question you will ever face. Because if the answer is yes, then you have no one left to blame, and you have no one left to wait for. There is a moment in every human life, quiet, unremarkable from the outside, invisible to everyone watching, where something shifts. Not in the bank account, not in the body, not in the circumstances. Something shifts in the mind. There once lived a struggling young dreamer, broke and uncertain, sleeping in a cramped car on the outskirts of a city that had not yet learned his name, who drove that battered car to the top of a quiet hill overlooking the glittering skyline below, pulled out a blank check, and wrote his own name as the recipient of a fortune for work he had not yet been given the chance to do. He post-dated it years into the future. He carried it folded in his wallet until the paper wore thin and soft as cloth. And by the time the universe had finished delivering everything that check had promised, he no longer needed to carry it at all, because the proof was no longer on paper. It was his entire life. This is not magic. This is not coincidence. This is the oldest and most ruthlessly accurate law that has ever governed human existence. That the mind, when pointed with precision and fed with unrelenting belief, will begin to bend reality itself toward the image it holds most consistently and most passionately. There once was a young competitor who did not walk into his first championship with the greatest physique in the room. He walked in with the most unshakable vision. He had seen himself as champion so many thousands of times inside the theater of his own mind that by the time he stood on that stage, victory was not a hope, it was a confirmation. He would later say that he had won before he ever lifted a single weight in preparation, because in his mind, it was already finished. The body was simply catching up to what the mind had already claimed. And yet, and this is where most human beings stop, where most dreams dissolve into the acid of everyday life, manifestation is not a passive act. It is not a vision board pinned to a wall while you scroll through the wreckage of other people's highlight reels at 2 in the morning. It is not a whispered prayer uttered once in desperation and then abandoned when Monday arrives with its weight and its noise and its relentless demand. True manifestation, the kind that rewrites bloodlines, that shatters generational ceilings, that makes the impossible mundane, is an act of savage, disciplined, daily devotion. It is the marriage of vision and violence. The violence of showing up when every cell in your body screams retreat. The violence of choosing belief over evidence when the evidence is cruel and the belief feels like madness. There once was a young girl born into a poverty so suffocating that she wore garments made from rough sacking to school while other children laughed and pointed. She was abused. She was dismissed. She was told by someone with power over her future that she was unfit for the very stage she would one day command. And yet, something inside her, some furnace of quiet, immovable knowing, refused to accept the world's verdict as final. She did not just dream of a different life. She inhabited it in her mind so completely, so viscerally, so continuously, that the outer world had no choice but to eventually conform. This is the secret that the most successful human beings in history have understood, and that the rest of the world has been conditioned to dismiss as fantasy. Your brain, that 3-pound universe sitting behind your eyes, cannot distinguish between an experience that is vividly and repeatedly imagined and an experience that has physically occurred. Neuroscience has confirmed what ancient philosophy always whispered, that the neural pathways carved by intense, emotionally charged visualization are indistinguishable from the pathways carved by lived experience. When you see yourself succeeding with enough clarity, enough emotion, enough repetition, your brain begins to operate as though success is already your native state. Your reticular activating system, that miraculous filter through which your mind decides what is relevant and what is invisible, begins to illuminate opportunities, connections, and resources that were always planned, but previously unseen. The world does not change. Your perception of it does. And perception, in every way that matters, is reality. But here is what no one tells you about the magic of the mind. Here is the part that costs something. The part that separates the dreamers who become legends from the dreamers who become regrets.
There once was a boy, the son of a humble boat owner in a small coastal town, who sold newspapers at dawn to fund his own education, who did not manifest the extraordinary heights he would one day reach by closing his eyes and wishing. He manifested it by coupling an iron vision with an iron work ethic so relentless that even failure became fuel. He failed his first attempt to join the ranks of the pilots he so deeply admired, missing the selection by a single position. And in that moment of devastating rejection, standing at the edge of a dream that had just refused him, he did not collapse. He recalibrated. He redirected. He returned to the drawing board not with bitterness, but with the burning, unshakable conviction that the universe was not closing a door. It was simply redirecting him toward a larger room. That boy who sold newspapers became one of the great architects of his nation's future. That rejected applicant became a leader who made an entire nation dream again. This is the truth that will either liberate you completely or terrify you into silence. And both reactions are understandable, because this truth carries the full weight of personal responsibility upon its shoulders. Every thought you think is a seed, not a metaphor, not a poetic device, a literal, biological, neurochemical seed that takes root in the soil of your subconscious mind and begins quietly, invisibly, with the patience of nature itself, to grow into the reality you will one day be forced to live inside. The thoughts you repeat become beliefs. The beliefs you hold become decisions. The decisions you make become actions. The actions you take become habits. The habits you build become character. And your character, that invisible architecture of everything you have repeatedly chosen to think and feel and do, becomes your destiny. This is not philosophy. This is not spirituality dressed in borrowed robes. This is the fundamental operating system of every human life that has ever amounted to something magnificent, and every human life that has ever quietly suffocated beneath the weight of its own untended mind. So the question is no longer whether manifestation works. The question, the only question that has ever mattered, is what are you manifesting right now, in this moment, without even realizing it? Because your mind is never still. It is never neutral. It is never off the clock. Every second of every day, whether you are conscious of it or not, your mind is broadcasting a frequency, a signal composed of your dominant thoughts, your habitual emotions, your deepest and most repeated beliefs about who you are and what you deserve and what is possible for someone like you. And the universe, that vast, indifferent, magnificently responsive field of energy and matter and possibility, is listening to every word. It does not judge. It does not edit. It does not protect you from your own pessimism or your own smallness or your own self-betrayal. It simply delivers with breathtaking accuracy the exact reality that matches the frequency you are most consistently broadcasting, which means that if you spend your days thinking thoughts of scarcity, the universe will confirm your scarcity. If you spend your days rehearsing failure, the universe will stage it for you with flawless precision. And if you dare to spend your days thinking thoughts so large, so luminous, so outrageously beyond your current circumstances that people around you begin to grow uncomfortable, the universe will conspire with every resource at its disposal to make those thoughts physical. This is your moment. Not tomorrow, not when the conditions are perfect, not when the fear dissolves or the doubt quiets, or the world finally decides to believe in you. Now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this single, irreversible instant that will never come again. The greatest tragedy in the history of human potential is not the person who tried and failed. It is the person who stood at the threshold of their own transformation, felt the terror of becoming, and chose the familiar pain of staying small over the unfamiliar glory of expansion. Do not be that person. You were not built for smallness. You were not assembled by the cosmos, gifted with consciousness and imagination, and the terrifying, magnificent ability to conceive of a future that does not yet exist, simply to spend your one and only life managing your own mediocrity. You were built to dream, with the precision of an architect and the hunger of a warrior. You were built to hold a vision so clearly, so consistently, so ferociously, that reality has no choice but to bend toward it. Start now. Start with one thought, one belief, one image of the person you are choosing. Not hoping, not wishing, but choosing to become. Hold it. Feed it. Protect it from the noise of the world and the doubt of the crowd and the cruelty of your own worst moments. Return to it every morning before the world gets its hands on you. Return to it every night before sleep carries you under. Make it the first thing your mind touches and the last thing it releases. Because the mind that is trained, directed, and fed with relentless intention does not just change your life. It changes everything around you. It changes what you see. It changes what you attract. It changes what you dare to reach for. And one day, one ordinary, unremarkable, absolutely extraordinary day, you will look up from the life you have built and realize that everything you once only dared to imagine is now the ground beneath your feet. And you will understand, finally and completely, that it was never magic. It was always you.